Hey everybody, so welcome back to Jim Bob's Garden. I want to say thank you to everybody for stopping by, taking a look at my videos and tell me what you think. I really do appreciate your support. Alright, with that being said, so today is just outside of 2 months from the projected last frost date. Projected last frost date here is March 7th, and today is January the 8th. So I'm going to go ahead and plant my cucumbers. Now I know a lot of people will tell you that you really want to plant cucumbers in the ground, but like if you look here on the back of the Ferry Morse package, it says to plant the cucumbers from between February and June in my area here in 9A. Alright, they are not frost tolerant. Okay, you cannot have frost to get your cucumbers. So I'm going to plant them in pots. And like I said, I know a lot of people will tell you that you really ought to plant your cucumbers directly in the ground. The only problem with that is that here in particular, because we don't usually get a real hard freeze, we get a lot of bugs. And the bugs really start to come in around June, July time frame. It's been my experience so far, particularly if we don't get a good hard freeze. So my goal here is to get them started in the pots, and then hopefully we'll get ahead of the bug population. Because the bugs will just tear these cucumbers up, and like last year I think we got 4 cucumbers out of all the cucumbers I planted. Now, you know, that wasn't just bugs. For some reason they just did not want to grow last year. I mean, I've had booming crops where I'm trying to give away cucumbers and people just don't want them anymore because they got too many. But this last year it was terrible for cucumbers and plums for some reason, but good for other things. Like tomatoes did fine. I mean, my greens did well. A lot of different things did well, but cucumbers just were not one of them. So I'm going to start them off in a pot, and then what we're going to do is I am going to start. This is my bigger, better pot. So I've got 4 varieties here. Well, I've got 3 varieties of cucumbers. So I'm going to take out of the 12 cells, and I'm going to plant 4 of each in these cells. Alright, and that way I've got bigger, better, hopefully stronger plants that I can plant directly in the garden. Then I'll put some more in some other pots here in a little bit. Now when it comes to cucumbers, how deep do you plant them? It says here to sow 5 seeds over a hill 12 inches tall and 2 feet across with well-drained soil. It says plant alongside a fence or trellis if you got a smaller garden. Alright, and it says when plants are 2 inches tall, thin to 3 plants per hill. And then plant at 3-week intervals up to midsummer for fresh cucumbers all season. Alright, it says for planting depth about 1/2 inch. Now, once again, you can see these seeds are very tiny. And they're not real big. I'm shading it out. Alright, so the rule of thumb is about 3 times the depth or the length of a seed. So that being said, I'm going to put these about 1/2 inch or so. I'm just going to dig a little divot, and then I'll put some soil back on top of them, and I'm going to put 2 per hole. Well, 2. And then what I'll do is if both of them, you know, actually I'm going to put 3. And if I get 3 plants, I'll cut it back to 1 per cell, and I'll just nip them off. That way I've got a little better chance of germination. At least 1 out of the 3 of those seeds should go ahead and sprout up. And then I think it's very important, particularly with cucumbers, because there's a ton of different cucumbers out there. By the way, I got these tags for like $5 for 100, so you can get them all day long on all the different online websites and such. Much as I hate to use Amazon. But I like to mark my cucumbers. That way I know which varieties did better. So that way you can pick out the varieties that are good for you in your garden. And I'll take that, place it in here. And I'll get me a handful of soil. I'll be right back. Scary movie, ah! And then I'll just cover them over a little bit, kind of fill it up to the top. I've shown you before how I like to go ahead and basically tamp down my soil by, you know, basically packing it by bouncing the tray into the dirt. And then I'll just cover it over, and that'll give me about ½ inch of depth of soil above these even after I water. So that's what I'm going to be doing right now, is I'm going to get my cucumbers planted. I don't know, I may do some squash. And then I'm also going to do some cucamelons, which are kind of cucumbers. By the way, these cucamelons, they are the coolest thing when it comes to snacks in your garden, man. I love them. You just go ahead and pick one and munch on them as you go along. It's even better than cherry tomatoes, or a great companion to cherry tomatoes. But now, I also want to talk about some of the other things that's going on right now. Oh yeah, and don't forget to water them in. It is, like I said, January the 8th, and it's time to really start looking at your garden and figuring out what you're going to do. All right, and also time to get things going in the greenhouse. Let me show you what I've got happening in here, and then we'll walk around a little bit and I'll show you what I'm doing elsewhere. So this is my little tiny greenhouse, all right, which is almost too small to video in because it's hard to get everything focused in. Got a couple of things going. That right there is the what is it, bleeding heart? No, Love Lies Bleeding amaranth, which is doing very well in the greenhouse so far. These are some tomato plants that I had earlier in pots. They're not really doing well. Part of the problem with a greenhouse, particularly one this small, is that you get a lot of blight in here because of the fact that it's a lot of moisture and not a lot of air movement. And then I want to show you this here. So this is my water tower. So what I've done here is I take the bottom jug is what I call weed tea. So I've got weeds in there fermenting away, and the biological activity in there should hopefully help to heat it up a little bit, create a little bit of heat. And then the top bucket of water is just a heat sink. So during the day it'll absorb that heat, and if at night, if it gets below freezing, it'll start allowing that heat back out into the greenhouse and heat it somewhat. All right, in here, this is my peppers. Well, okay, let me show you this first. This is a pepper plant that I dug up and put in a pot to hopefully keep for this coming year, this year, I guess I should say. But also, hopefully, if it continues to grow while it's in here, over the next month or two, I might get a pepper or two. All right, which I think would be really cool. Over here, you got my bell peppers. Now, these two trays here, the only thing growing is what appears to be a tomato, which I'm not really sure how a tomato got in there. One of the things about using your compost, though, you're going to find all kind of weird seeds. I may have a pepper, that one little curl bit right there, and it might be a pepper coming up, but hopefully they'll start popping up here soon. It does take a while for peppers to get going. And over here I got some lettuce that I just started up in here. I want to move them out here a little bit to keep them cool. My dragon fruit, I got several different types of dragon fruit here. I'm really just leaving them in here because I don't want them to freeze. But I want to show you something interesting. So that Rutgers tomato and the Homestead tomato, the seeds on those are at least 3 years old, and yet they're all germinating. So a lot of you guys that have asked questions, you know, can I keep tomato seeds for X amount of time? I mean, I've done really well with these. I mean, obviously just about everything in the Rutgers is popping up. The Roma tomatoes were from last year. The seed was from last year. I mean, as in I planted that seed and I had some left over, so I planted it again this year, so it's a year old. And in the Homestead as well, it looks like everything is germinating pretty well. But now this is the Buratino tomato, and you can see I've got 2 cells that have not yet sprouted. All of these were planted, well, I guess it'd be 10 days ago. So they're sprouting up pretty well. And then down here, if you look, you can see that I've got my these are my clones down here. of different tomato plants that I had growing that hadn't died yet from the winter. And I've started, you know, I just put sprouts, or I'm sorry, branches. I just put basically sucker branches off of the tomato plant into the ground, and they're doing pretty well. I mean, they don't want to pull out, so they're starting to root. I do have a little bit of blight back here on that one, so we'll see if it manages to make it or not. But either way, hopefully I'll get a little bit of something out of this and get them growing. But like I said, the big concern is the moisture in here and the blight. I'm not really sure if those things are going to take, but we'll see. We'll see how it all goes, and hopefully we'll be okay. But that's what I've got. Oh yeah, and this is my cranberry hibiscus, which will not do well in the wintertime. It'll freeze back as well. So I got 2 plants of that planted back in here as well. All started from cuttings. All right, then let's take a look around the garden. Let me just show you real quick over here. All right, so over here you can see that my soil is looking really dark. That's because all of that is compost. I went ahead and took all the weeds out, put a bunch of compost down, just kind of covered it over to hopefully get it to the point where we've got nice rich soil. I'll go ahead and stir that up and mix that in. This particular area did not do as great last year as I'd hoped. All right, but that's part of what you want to be looking at doing right now, is going ahead and starting to prep up your beds, get things going. Over here I got some chard, lettuce, and onion. And then over here, once again, I did the same thing I did over there, except this one I stirred in by hand. So I took a bunch of compost in here, stirred it up, mixed it in with the native soil, and I'm letting it sit for a month or 2 before I start to plant things in here. I may plant some chard, I haven't decided yet. I want some more of that, the giant Fordham chard. It seems to do very well, and my daughter loves it. All right, and then we got other projects ongoing, you know, cleaning things out. Went through and pulled all the weeds out of here. All my broccoli is bolting, but I'm leaving the flowers so that hopefully they will attract pollinators, but there just hasn't been many pollinators recently. And then over here, once again, I'm working on getting that all prepped up, pulling the weeds out. And then my cauliflower, even though I've been keeping it wet, it just hasn't done great. I do have some baby cauliflower trying to grow down in there. Well, maybe you can see it, maybe you can't. It's kind of hard to see. There you go. So, got a little bit of cauliflower growing. And then of course this bed here has been doing fantastic. I apologize for the darkness of the video, but it's kind of late in the afternoon, so that happens sometimes. So I guess what I'm telling you, or I guess there's no I guess to it, what I'm telling you is I highly recommend that you get things going here shortly. If you haven't started out there working in your garden yet, you're going to get behind the power curve if you don't start getting things planted here now, very soon. I really highly recommend now is the time, if you haven't started anything yet, to get things going. You got 8 weeks or so here in the Jacksonville area between now and the projected last frost. And I'll be honest with you, I mean, it's like, what, 70 degrees out here today, January 8th. I don't know if we're going to get a frost, and if we do, it may be a very short one. You know, it's so far seems to be one of them very warm winters. That may change, I don't know, and we might even be facing late frost, but you know, it's far better in my opinion to get plants in the ground and cover them in the case of a late frost than it is to wait until all possibility of frost is gone and then plant. That's just my opinion. Now what I will do is I will save some of these plants back, and I will plant some more probably here in about a month, just to make sure that I have backups, so that when the time comes, if I do lose some of the frost, I can always, you know, go back and plant some more. All right, so get stuff going, man. Get it happening. I mean, you know, if you're like me and you're just itching to get out here, you know, pulling weeds doesn't satisfy near as much as watching things grow. So get some things growing. Get some things planted in your plants. If you don't have a greenhouse, you got a sunny window south side of the house, you know, put them there. Get yourself a little stand of some sort, a small table, and plant them somewhere where you get at least 6 to 8 hours of sun. For tomatoes, it's not as big a problem, because if they get leggy, then really all you got to do is just bury them deep. But for other plants, it can be an issue. If you start planting them and they start reaching for the sun, essentially, they'll get really long and then they'll flop over, which is not cool. It ends up kinking the plant, and then, you know, obviously things don't want to grow like they should. But get yourself some plants growing. And if not, I mean, that's fine too. You can plant everything directly in the ground. Like cucumbers are fine directly in the ground. It's just, for me, I like to get that head start on the bugs. All right. Anyway, so January 8th, time to start planting. Thanks once again for stopping by. Do me a favor, give me a like and a subscribe, and let me know what you think. But most importantly, grow something. Get something growing. All right. The more you grow, the less you got to buy. The less you got to buy, the more money you got in your pocket. So if you want to save yourself some money, get a garden growing. All right, thanks once again.